Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I want to take the time to welcome our guests, and they are coming with several things that I deem very, very expensive. First is their time. Time is a commodity that is so expensive. Much of us, we have wasted it, but it is never too late. And I want to thank Tracey for coming with her precious time to spend it here with us. The other is her journey, that precious, precious space that is her. She is here to share with us and open us to that so that we can learn from her and become better human spirits. Tracey, I thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. It truly is. And I love all the work that you're doing in the world. It's so necessary. And I appreciate having this platform just to kind of share a little bit about myself and the work that comes through me, because it isn't me. You know, it's the work is called Transmosis. And it's like, I was working with someone, gosh, maybe back in the 90s. I was doing Reiki or something with her in Colorado where I lived. And I had my hands on her torso. And I heard the word transmosis. And I'm like, I wonder what that means. So I wrote it down. I had a little whiteboard behind me. And I asked all of these people. I asked channelers. I asked everybody, what does this mean? And nobody could or would tell me. So I started researching like transformation and osmosis and what could it mean. And so finally I thought about it and I go, I'm just going to ask spirit.
Yeah.
Spirit is a word. So what does it mean? And this is what I got. Transmosis, an unconscious transfer and assimilation of higher energies to raise the recipient's energy to equal the source energy. I don't talk like that. So that's how I knew it came from source. It came from spirit. And I guess what happens is it's not me, but we call in 100% pure divine light. And one day I was driving to work and I heard, call Vicky. And I'm like, no, I'm not calling Vicky, whatever. And it happened repeatedly. So finally I listened. And when I did call Vicky, she's this woman who apparently did energy clearings, and I did not know that. I had been to her dome before. This is in Niwater, Boulder, Colorado. So I called, and her outgoing message said, hi, friends, we're out camping. If you want an energy clearing, call Jean. So I was like, okay. So I called Jean, and I had an energy clearing. And I realized, oh gosh, Jean and Vicky are giving structure to what I do naturally. So naturally, and I've studied all these energy work modalities. I just am aligned with it. I like it. And I'll do anything. I was always in quality, like process improvement. So it's like improving the human being, improving myself, improving any kind of a wound that I may have so that I can be the best human being that I can be.
Yeah.
So when I had the clearing and I realized that they gave structure to what I do naturally, I had to find out more. And it was a course called Spirit Mending or Multidimensional Body Balancing. And myself and probably 6 other women were chosen. We had to interview to take this class. And I'd never had to interview to take an energy. But I'm really
fascinating.
You have to have a certain level of experience and clarity because it's very sacred. And I'm not tooting my own horn. It's just very sacred. So when I was laying on the bodywork table, Vicky kind of paused. And I'm like, what's going on? Because she called in 100% pure divine light. And she goes, oh, I'm just waiting for the change of the guards. So I always thought I was working with high vibe, but apparently, things can be tricky. So she waited for the team to replace themselves. And so that's the thing I really want to call forth to everyone. Even if you think it or have the intention, our spoken word is so powerful. So just by stating, I call in 100% pure divine light, and I ask for my highest and greatest good to be done for myself and for all concerned. Because it's all one thing, and it's not just about you, but, you want how can you be of the greatest service to the whole? That's pretty much what we're here to do, is to be the local representatives of the divine and act like it, and do everything to be what we really are, divine human beings. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
I love that information because I wanted to know, how did you get that? I had a similar experience when I was in my meditation and prayer and time, and I got this phrase and I wrote it down, the blueprint of faith. And I was like, blueprint of faith? What are you talking about? And it was not until about 4 or 5 years later that it came out of a book. I thought it would be something else, and I wrote a book entitled The Blueprint of Faith, and basically the belief system of the human being, how it is powerful, and everyone believes, including the atheists have a belief. So it is that system that we do, and what we do with it will dictate how we live. So I want you to go back, Tracey, as to when you were this young girl. Mom and dad kissed you. They brought you in from the hospital and they put you into the crib in the room, got everything painted and everything, and you're here. I want you to talk to us about your family life, because this is where we begin. This is where the programming starts, when people began to deposit into our human spirit and our belief system information that we then perceive it, accept it. How we accept it sometimes will cause a trauma, and that trauma will guide us, cause us to live certain ways, and so forth. So talk to us about your upbringing. How was that?
Well, I thought it was. I was born in Washington, D.C., and I was raised in Northern Virginia. And my mother had 2 other sisters and a brother, and my father had a brother and a sister. So we all lived in the metropolitan area, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia.
Yeah.
And we all kind of hung out. Like, my cousins were my friends. My mother's sisters were very close. And so all of us cousins used to hang out. And it's interesting when you say that. I have a younger sister. She's 3 years younger. And I think my mom stayed home while my dad went to work as a mortgage banker for a company called Weaver Brothers. Yeah. And then we made the big move from Springfield, Virginia to Annandale, Virginia, into this neighborhood called Camelot. And people thought we were wealthy, and we weren't. But maybe because we went into debt and bought a bigger house, kind of a thing. I don't know. I think that's what happened. So regular life, I mean, I remember having, I'm going to turn my phone into airplane mode so it doesn't interfere with our broadcast.
That's okay.
I think that the wounding was, I remember, this is weird, but I remember being 2 years old. And I remember trying to figure out on one of those shoes that teach you how to tie your shoe.
Yeah.
Like how to tie a knot. And I remember getting so excited because I finally did it. I figured it out. I remember going into the kitchen and telling my mom, who was busy cooking dinner, and she says, "Oh, that's really great. Can you do it again?" And I was like, "Oh," and I kind of like got, I couldn't figure out how I did it. And I went back. So to me, in that experience, in that memory, when you ask that question, it's like, okay, I've always depended on myself, and why would that be? And I it's like I would say that I have trust issues, that I don't trust that anyone's going to take care of me. And really the only being or energy that can care for us is the divine. So I'm like 5 years old. My sister and I are sharing a bedroom. We have twin beds in Springfield, Virginia there before we moved to the big house. And I guess when I was sleeping, I went like this and I ran my arm and I had a little guppy in a bowl. And it fell to the floor, and I'm screaming, "Oh!" And this is in the middle of the night. So my parents come running in, and everybody's trying to find a beige guppy against a beige floor in the middle of the night. And it died, and I felt horrible. So I remember that we buried it in the backyard and had little popsicle sticks for a cross. And I don't know I don't know how I did this. So I must have always been connected with a memory to the divine. But I snuck, I guess, because how would a little kid who's 5 years old get up in the middle of the night? And I went into the kitchen, and I remember looking out the window, and I saw this beam of light, and it was like a full moon. And I think I remember, we talk about belief systems, that Jesus carried my fish up to heaven.
That's a beautiful picture, though, I think, for a young girl to see that and to have an experience in that. So you mentioned something that is interesting to me, where you said you had to fend for yourself, or you feel that you had. Where did you get that from, Tracey? Where did you think you picked that up from? Because that is a powerful thing to say at a young age that you sense. But what was it that maybe in your recollection that caused you to bring that into your space?
I think my parents did the best that they could, but I don't think that they knew just how sensitive I was.
Yeah.
And so if I were to need something, support, not physically, I mean emotionally or spiritually or mentally or something, I think if you keep trying to get something, blood from a turnip, and it doesn't come, you learn to rely on yourself in your inner life. And I would have experiences where I saw a puppet or something. In Virginia, it was very warm and humid. And so at night, the window was open just a little bit. And I remember laying in my bed and looking at my window and then seeing a puppet or something come up. And I tried to scream because I was so afraid. And no sound would come out. So then my mom or somebody would come in to console me, but it didn't work. I couldn't express what I was witnessing. I couldn't talk because I was so afraid. But there was, I think, and I don't recall for sure, but I think that I basically kind of gave up and just concluded that they don't get me.
I think I always say to people, and I believe it, and like I said in the onset, until someone shows me, I'm going to live with it. I think life is a series of agreements that we make to ourselves, and we start with those things. It's an internal agreement, and it comes about as a result of an act. Something happens, and then we will say it within ourselves. And a lot of people, we're looking around. We could be in a crowd of people, and we made that agreement within ourselves. And sometimes it's shutting down a relationship. Sometimes it's all kinds of things. Once we make that decision, and I tell folks that it becomes our statement of faith, meaning that we believe it. We now took ownership of it. And when we take ownership of things we say, because like you said, the words, power of the words is very, 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 very serious thing, because it can heal or it can damage. And so when we have that knowledge and we make that agreement with ourselves, we then do the things necessary to make that agreement real, reality. And so here you are, this young girl making this agreement, saying, okay, I get it. I'm here. So how did she now begin to relate to the world, the other entities, the other bodies outside of your family? Meaning, you said your cousins, but when you got into school, how did you relate to those individuals? Being sensitive, number one, and having made that agreement that I'm going to do this on my own.
Well, when I lived in Springfield, I had a best friend, Charlene. We just play outside all the time. So nature was very important. I came alive in nature. I remember collecting box turtles. I must have had 9 of them. And I built like a little fort for them. And we had this beautiful wooded backyard. And so playing in nature is huge for me. And then we moved to I call it the big house, and I don't mean it like prison or any of that. And it was in Annandale, Virginia, and there were 4 other women, girls, that we all became really good friends. So we were called the Camelot, and we would hang out. And so I think that through school, through riding the bus, through a tornado hitting our school, you get close through those experiences of just communing and talking, playing crazy eights with cards after school, and just learning about life, learning about boys, learning about social, who's in, who's out, all of that weirdness that happens in growing up. I had some really good friends. I had a dear friend, Barbara, and her older sisters. They kind of became my surrogate family.
Yeah.
And really loved me and supported me. And not that my parents didn't, but I was the oldest, and I don't know. I stayed away from the house. I did. I love my parents, and they're off the planet now. And looking back, they were functioning alcoholics. So no wonder it was weird.
Yeah.
You don't know. And then I remember being 18 and going to an Al-Anon meeting because I had a boyfriend who was an alcoholic, and I wanted to learn about it. So my cousin and I went, and we learned a lot about our family. And I thought, oh my gosh, why does my mom drink? Doesn't she see her sister is pretty much a raging alcoholic? So there's all that dysfunction that can happen in a family that you think is normal, and then you realize it isn't, and that there are other families that don't do that. And so, like you said about those conclusions, you think that your family's great and perfect, and they're lenient, so I have it great, when in fact they just were neglectful in a sense. They weren't real active in curiosity about me. But then again, like you said, our parents are wounded, and they did the best they could and all of that. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot outside the family as well as within the family.
As you are noticing, and you notice these things within your family, because I think they're ancestral things that travel through a family. And there's always the opportunity, there's always one that will rise up against that and to change that paradigm that is walking through the family. There's always the opportunity for one. And I love the fact that in all the mess that in the family, there will be someone, Tracey, that will stand up and say, no, this is going to be different. I am going to be and create a new paradigm within that family genes. Talk to me as you begin to move forward from there. You've gained much friends, and this girl is blossoming, and you are in high school. Times are good. You're walking into college now. What, as you're heading that route, because you're going to college, you're now you're being put in a situation where you have to begin to investigate your life as to what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? How were you looking at yourself at that space, and why did you pick where you ended up as far as your education is?
I ended up going to college with my best friend, and we went down to Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And I originally wanted to be a journalist, and then I wanted to be a marine biologist. And, it was all over the map. And I couldn't really do oceanography, which would have been really interesting because I am so fair. I just would have burned up out there on the water. And then the journalist thing, I guess it was more, and then I did become a writer. So I was following my inner urges. I was very interested there was a 400 level dream course, and I was just a freshman. I didn't know enough to know that you had to, go through all the years, first year, second year, third year, fourth year. And so I've always noticed that I've been interested in the mysteries, the invisible. And I went there for 2 years, and I would say that I was extremely uncomfortable, extremely self-conscious, and just trying to find my way. It was really, really uncomfortable. And then I came home after 2 years of undergrad work there and got a job at Xerox. My godmother worked at Xerox, and I thought, okay, I got my corporate job. This is great. Well, I started to conform. And, socially I get along. I get along. I can relate even if I'm in corporate America, but it was very, very stressful. And, so I worked at Xerox for 9 years and, was always studying a course in miracles on the side, energy work on the side. So my whole life was on the side.
So you have this, you have this awareness. I love that because we all do it, Tracy. We all buy into that conformity and the programming of that, because to step out of it, they tell us you can't do it. It's just fear-based. They pound that in us that you got to stay in this 9 to 5. You got anything outside of that. How are you going to live? How are you going to do this? And so they program us. And so we do our side thing where we study as we are in this arena that is designed to be a pressure cooker to break people, to drive people to drink, to all kinds of stuff in there. You body shame yourself. This is a wonderful place to be if you want to lose your mind. So here you are. You're recognizing these things, and you're feeling because when you are exposed to that, Tracey, when you're exposed to the spiritual aspect of it, when you're not there, it's very uncomfortable. So talk to me about that uncomfortness that you're doing, because I know how it feels, and it doesn't matter what you achieve. There's this nagging thing there that is just sitting there. So talk to me as to how did you manage your life and with your side studying, as we were saying, and progressing in corporate America.
Well, in Annandale, there was a woman named Diet. She's off the planet now. And I look back, and she was my first teacher. She rubbed my feet. She did reflexology on my feet. And I was like, oh, this is nice. And she was the one that had a Course in Miracles group at her house every Sunday night. And if you've ever studied A Course in Miracles, it's kind of like spiritual psychotherapy, and your ego gets demolished, and it really changes you. And so to be out in the world doing all those ego-based things, and then to be able to come there and really elicit the truth of who it really is, it does something to you. It changes you. And Diet suggested I take Reiki. I'm like, okay. So this was a long time ago. This was like in 83, and I took Reiki 1. So I fortunately had a guide in my life, not even consciously knowing it at the time. And we studied, it's Jerry Jampolsky's work out of California. I was in a person-to-person program working with people who had families of terminally ill people. And we were in the person-to-person program, so we were learning how to facilitate and being there to support someone who's going through that as a caregiver. Yeah. And during that time, my father passed away. And one of the lessons is death need not be viewed as fearful. And a week before that, my father passed, I had a dream about Pegasus, a flying horse.
The horse.
And I remember telling the facilitator of our program about that, and she thought, tell me more, this is very important, la la la. And then a week later, my father passed away, and then I had to teach that week the facilitator course of death need not be viewed as fearful. And I noticed all of the people in my little group were very silent, like they were very honoring of my feelings. And I was like, finally, I just had to say, come on, guys, death need not be viewed as fearful. You don't have to be quiet and worry about me. So I was always taking care of myself in that way as I look back on it. And there's a lot of inner growth that happens when you experience a lot of death. And I experienced my guppy. I experienced my friend who committed suicide when I was in college. I experienced my other friend who passed in a car accident. So there's just, an onslaught. There was just an onslaught of death. And why that is, I don't know, but I learned about it early in life. And it causes you weep.
You're looking at your mortality, and you're beginning to ask those questions as to why and how. And it is a necessary process. I think in our Western civilization, we use and utilize death as something really, as you said, it just upsetting and all that stuff. In certain cultures, no, it's differently. They use that as a celebration. And I think if we understand that, then life would be much easier. Of course, you miss that person because we had a human experience with them. But in the sense of all things, when you look at the purity of it, they are free from this body that keeps them legal in this planet. And they are now free to go and experience other dimensions and so forth. And so that is the beauty about it when you look at it from that aspect versus just from the body part of it. So talk to us as you begin to experience these things, because these are serious things. There's much trauma that you can bring into your space from the death being more coming on and not understanding it and just internalizing some of those things. Talk to us as to what, as you began to experience through the classes, the Reiki, again, taking this stuff in the 80s, man, Reiki at the time, you were operating as like a witch doctor. Talk, talk to me as to how did you begin to incorporate that aspect of the Reiki and the spiritual aspect of your life into your living, and then having to face, because I know you had to come to face with this corporate world and where your heart is pulling you.
I recall my best friend and her children came to visit us in Denver, Colorado, and we had one of those minivans. And when you close the side door, it slides, and her son's fingers were in the door. And I remember, okay, everybody, let's just do Reiki right now on Tommy's hand. And we all did it. And I saw her older son just like, he's Catholic, and he was like bowing and praying, and it was just so beautiful. And do you know that her son did not have a problem with his hands? Because we did it instantly.
Yeah.
So that wasn't in corporate America. But one time I remember being in corporate America and kind of feeling not chastised, but yelled at in a sense, energetically. And I just started, chanting Q, for example, H-U, which is like an ancient name for God. And I remember just thinking it, and it just like chills you right out. And it didn't bother me anymore. So whenever I was stressed out driving to work, I would sing that and try it. So I studied with so many people like Dr. Master Shah, and singing songs and understanding light language or soul language. Dr. Shah used to say, I went to this, it was in Arizona, and it was for a weekend, and it was, what was it called? Soul Power, or it was a weekend to become enlightened or something. I'm like, let's go. So my girlfriend Vicky and I went, and Master Shah would say, okay, Spirit gave him, God gave him a phone number, or so he thought. And it's in Mandarin, so forgive me if I botch it, but it's like, Sen San Julio Ba Ya Wu. And it's like all these numbers, and if you keep saying them over and over again really fast, all of a sudden your light language or your soul language comes out. And I remember being at that little weekend seminar and standing up on his short little stage, and he was standing in front of me, and there's a few people in the, 25, 30 maybe people in the hotel room taking this workshop. And I remember doing San San Julio Ba Ya Wu, and then I just started speaking in tongues or light language, soul power just started coming out. And Master Shah actually was like giggling at me, I'm like, what did I say? I must have said something that was really funny. I remember having that thought. I don't even know what it was. Sense of humor is huge. My life, I've been serious my entire life. So when I'm in corporate America, it's very serious. And I would be at my computer and I'm typing, and all of a sudden I realize, oh my gosh, I'm out of the present moment because I'm so focused in the outer world. And I would have to just recenter myself so that I could be present and still be in the world, but also be connected to my inner world where the juice is.
I understand totally what you're talking about because I've been there, and I had to come to a space where I had to disconnect from the corporate world. And it was really interesting what caused me. And I always tell people, we drift until. And my until was when I went into the hospital. I got sick and I went into the hospital, and they told me that I almost died. And my body was sepsis and so forth. And so when I was in ICU for about a week and a half and so forth, when I woke up and came out of there, I started investigating my life and looking at myself and said, what am I doing? I know better than this. And that was my catalyst that caused me to disconnect 100% and began the journey, they call it in the Christian faith, walking by faith. And so I decided to say, okay, I don't see all of the answers. I don't see all of the finances, and I had some saved and all that stuff, but I'm looking further out. And I said, I don't see all of it. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to do what I feel is a part of what I must do. And I went through my journey to learn who I am and to learn to accept myself and all of that. But I was still lingering there. But that uneasiness I was the type of person that I needed something like this to get me out, because I was a single dad and had to provide for my kids, and you put your face down and you focus, and that was it. And I needed an incident and until to that drastic level, because I wouldn't have paid attention. Once I received it, got shook up in back into my true senses, I then began to move, because it does take courage. You have to unhook from all the fearful things that they tell you that you can't make it outside of them. And I'm here to show them that that's not the case. And so that's where the birth of Threads of Enlightenment came in, and all that type of stuff. I began to do those things that were on my heart. So talk to me as to when you had your visitation, because you're still dabbling back and forth. How did you say, no, this is the principles that I've learned so far, and I needed to put them down so that I can help others to come out of their space?
During COVID, I worked for a company called the Chi, CHI, the ChiCenter.com. So it was closer. It was still working for someone, but it was closer because it was in alignment with Qigong. It was in alignment with, and when my body freaked out, because when you're doing computer work consistently, and I was helping them do customer service, and it was 24/7 because I was just one person, and oftentimes they would put out an email and then people would have a million questions. And long story short, Master Mingtong did what was called a mastermind, and it was almost like it was intense. And my eye started being really strained. This was in February of 2020. No, 2021.
29.
And when my body broke down, and I was like, I have to not do this anymore. Even if I bought those blue glasses, and all of it, I decided, okay, I'm old enough, security and everything, that I could start applying to take early retirement through Social Security.
Yeah.
So I gave 8 weeks notice, and April 1, 2021 was like, I'm on my own. I'm doing this full time. And I had a business coach and everything. And she's like, you need to get in front of other people's audiences. Well, I'm honestly extremely shy. I can act like I can do this. I am really shy, and I'm getting better at it the more I talk about it. And so I decided, because of my body was freaking out and couldn't do it anymore. So I went ahead and gave my notice and took the plunge and trusted. And that's huge. It's just to trust.
That's it. Yeah.
And I've always done this on the side. But now the side became the whole.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's why I ask you, because I know it happened to me, and I know it must happen to you as well. Something made that transition, and the COVID pandemic, I think, was. I know I say this with all humbleness and understanding that many people died, but I believe it was something for a reset for mankind. And I believe the collective was a needed thing, because a lot of people were pregnant. And had this not happened, their pregnancy may have been aborted like yours. You were pregnant with something, but we were taught and programmed to connect and stay connected. And because of that onset, I cannot tell you the amount of people that I've interviewed that most of their current business and programs and books and all that stuff came as a result of COVID. People were pregnant, Tracey, and they had to disconnect. And this was the opportunity that was afforded all of us to reevaluate what is important to your human experience as a spirit. What is it do you desire? What are all? That's why you're seeing this massive migration away from work and corporate field, because the people are making the decision that, wait a minute, I think I am a little more important and valuable than how they were looking at me. And I'm pregnant with something and I want to give birth. So here you are, you have came out of this pregnancy and you gave birth to this child. Now talk to me, because that title, you told us how you got it. So how did you incorporate it and realize that all those years you were given that, and it was time for you to put that into a format by which you can then service and become a servant to someone? As you said, that woman who was rubbing your feet, she was serving you. So talk to me about that.
There is a beautiful woman down in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who owns a company called Resonant Essentials. And the business coach said, her name is Barbara. She said, you and Michelle need to have an interview online. And so I had never done that before. So Michelle came up here to Santa Fe. It's an hour drive. And I gave her a Transmosis healing session. And she's someone who sees very, very deeply. And she saw that I was the real deal, if you will.
Yeah.
And so she said, okay, we're going to do an interview next week and we'll see what happens. I'm like, okay. So a week later, we did a Zoom interview. And during the interview, she said, so basically I got wrangled in, which is a blessing and a half, to work at her place for their psychic affair. And so it was the first time I'd done a psychic fair in a really long time. Being super sensitive, it's kind of difficult to be around all that energy. It's kind of frenetic and everything. But there's this little healing space in the back of her big open space. So I had a full clientele of like, $20 for 20 minutes, and all these people had it. And Michelle was the one that called it Transmosis Healing. See, I wanted to call it just Transmosis Energy, Transmosis. But right before I wanted to go get the URL, a cybersecurity company had already pulled that name. It's like, really? So, and I have a beautiful graphic artist, and he called it the Power of Transmosis Healing, which is really nice. And so I honestly am a vehicle of 100% pure divine light. And the clients would tell me what they want to work on physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, because I would ask them. And then I have a map, which is basically one piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, that has lots of words on it, which is basically a summary of everything that I learned through the multidimensional body balancing and more. And I call in the person of 100% pure divine light. I ask for their highest and greatest good to be done for themselves and for all concerned. And then I ask the divine to show me what is in their highest and greatest good. So then I use applied kinesiology, muscle testing, and asking the truth. And then I muscle test all the words on my map. And then when I get together with the person, we discuss what they want to work on. We discuss what I got for them. And then we basically call in their guides and my guides of 100% pure divine light. And then I ask to be shown. And then I share through my one voice. It's not me, but I share what is in their highest and greatest good. And it may or may not be on their list or my list, but it sure gives us a roadmap. And when you talked about ancestry, oh my gosh, everyone's issue is ancestry, the DNA, things from the past, because energies get stuck. They get stuck in the past. And so it's very important, we always want to be present, but yet we've got all of this experience behind us, let alone, let's say, past lives, let alone our DNA from our ancestors. So we clear on the mother's side of the family or the father's side of the family, however many generations back. And just through the light clearing, the light meaning the violet consuming flame or the purple transmuting flame. And once you clear something out with these phrases and with the divine guidance of what to say and what to do, we can clear up a lot of space. And then the universe has an opening. And it's like, wait, I don't want anything negative or dark or something to fill that up. So we heal and seal everything with liquid golden light. And then wounds look like counterclockwise spirals going into the body. And like if someone's life took on a downward spiral, it makes sense. It's like a wound that just needs to be cleaned up and removed. And then we heal and seal it with liquid golden light. And then we activate upward spirals. We return the person to their current divine blueprint, because most of the times we're born with the blueprint, our DNA patterning, but through our life experience, we upgrade, we clear things out. And so we always like pull people back to their current divine blueprint. So it's very sacred. And through the work that I've done, what I'd like to do is to be able to teach this, because I want to heal the world, but not really. I want to empower the world. So each and every person can connect to their inner realms, and they can do this for themselves. It's kind of like when you contemplate or meditate in the morning. Well, you call in 100% pure divine light, and you ask for your highest and greatest good. And then you just use your intuition, your imagination. You connect to the divine part of you. There's a part of you, whether you're conscious of it or not, that knows exactly what to do. And so if you can take a leap of faith and connect to that part that does know what to do, and just go with the flow and clear yourself. It's spiritual hygiene. It's like brushing your teeth, but it's your energy. And oftentimes our energies that get stuck in the past, they have life too, and they want to keep living. So when you clean them up and transmute them, then they can go on living in their evolutionary phase. It's just a different way of looking at things.
Well, because we are energy, we are housed in this body. I mean, this body, when we leave this body, the body is not who we are. I mean, it's just a house. It's a container that holds us and give us a form that you and I can touch and hold and all of that stuff, because we are having this human experience. But again, when that body is no longer needed, and we move on to that next plane, and we then can travel way beyond. But the DNA, we just focus on the DNA of the the physical body. But there's a DNA within the spiritual body. And that is the stuff that is what you guys are working on, that we all are called to work on in order for us to become a truly, I call it, we become a human spirit, a mature human spirit, an enlightened one that walks and operates from the space of love, one that is empathetic, one that is patient with someone that is not at that level at that time. All of these things come out of the spiritual realm, by which we then can use and operate in the natural to bring peace to someone else's space. I had this revelation when I was going through my journey, Tracey, that I'm one of a kind, and my friends and family would hear me say it all the time. And it was important for me, as I was going through my journey, to bring that to my attention, because I was suffering from the less than. But as I move through my journey and go into life and so forth, I realized that revelation was even more powerful than that. What it caused me to now have the responsibility that when I meet someone, every single person on this planet is an endangered species. And because of that, I have to speak to them with honor and with a different approach. I had to learn it first. And once I learned it personally, then when I see you, I know for a fact that once you are gone, your eye retina that people use to identify you, your fingerprints, your voice, all your face recognition, all of that is leaving with you once you leave. And so I must always honor that person that is in front of me that I'm speaking with, because they are an endangered species. And so when you have those people that are coming as you come through your teaching and you're now serving, I approach that in mind that I am dealing with something special, and I want them to feel that way. Those of you guys that have been listening to this conversation, I love what Tracey said. She says she wants to heal the world, but she wants to do more than that. She wants to teach the world. And so I want you guys to get in touch with her, get into her space, man. Get some of that juice, that insight that she talks about, so that you can put some flavor into your life. And I tell people, one-dimensional people are boring. And unless you come into your spiritual knowledge, you're one-dimensional. And when you are exposed to that spiritual aspect of yourself, man, life becomes sweet. That's where living is, because you're now living from your gift that you have discovered through your journey. And as you walk through your living, that gift will then sustain you, and you live from and out of that space. Tracey, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a beautiful conversation.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I totally enjoyed connecting with you. I love your energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.